Hey to all the spooks out there. Welcome back to another episode of Spine Chilling Chats, where every Wednesday we dig up the darkest corners of true crime, history, folklore, and the supernatural. I'm Ange.
And I'm Amanda.
Today, I'm taking you back to the foggy streets of 1940s London, where one man turned his own home into a house of horrors.
Speaking of London, did you hear, this was a couple months ago, that they might know who the Ripper is?
Yes, but I don't believe it.
You don't think so?
No, because the article of clothing that they have with, I believe it was a shawl, it hasn't been preserved properly for evidence for DNA testing.
Okay, I didn't hear any of this.
The person who is claiming this, who supposedly tested it, is the owner of the shawl, and he purchased it. So by him claiming that
his own,
he's in it to make the money off of it.
That.
So I don't believe it.
Okay.
I
didn't hear about any of that. I just heard that.
Other people are all gung-ho about it, but no. Until it is peer reviewed and, somebody else tested it and comes back with the same then
conclusions.
Yeah. John Christie, mild-mannered, unassuming, and deeply, deeply disturbing. This is a story of 10 Rillington Place, a place of trust, a place of horror, and a place where the dead were hidden in plain sight. Turn the lights down and listen closely, because some monsters don't just live in nightmares, they live next door. There is a trigger warning for rape and murder, including the murder of a child and unborn fetus.
Aww. I hate that. I hate the children one. I hate all of them, but I really hate the children one.
So before we get into it, I told you earlier I had a story for you.
Yes, you did. And I was thinking all day long, like, oh my gosh.
Yes,
okay.
But I wanted to save it for this. So you know how I'm such a skeptic about everything.
Yes.
About everything.
Everything.
I question everything.
Everything.
Well, last night, I had a nightmare.
Okay.
I was being attacked by some sort of entity. I don't know if it was supposed to be a demon or just some other random ghost or whatever, but it was attacking me.
Okay.
And when I woke up from my dream, I just felt panicky. Like I still was in that fight or fight kind of feeling. Yeah. And I tried to just, go back to sleep but it wasn't going away. So I remembered what I've heard on other podcasts, especially my Two Girls, One Ghost, my favorite. And they were talking about different times when they've had sleep paralysis or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they'll imagine wrapping themselves with a ribbon of light and think, I am light, I am love, that kind of thing, just positive thinking.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'm going to try this, whatever. And as I'm imagining this and I'm thinking in my head, I am light, I am love, you are not welcome here. I just did it again. My whole body got chills.
I got chills.
Like goosebumps.
Look at that.
My entire body. And it would not stop. Just all over tingling. I'm still like, what the fuck is going on? And so I kept saying it. And I just continual goosebumps while I'm saying this.
Yeah.
And then finally I stopped saying it and I kind of sat up in bed and went to my phone for a little bit to try to distract myself. I am such a skeptic and that freaks me out.
I've had two ghost stories and she has had none.
So I don't know if it was just my body was still in that panic nightmare situation, but getting the whole chills
is a new experience for you.
Yeah, my entire body. Like I've had goosebumps, you know, but it continually doing it every time I would say, "I am light, I am love."
It's like
you are not welcome
want to
here.
Go away.
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to share it with you so bad.
I told you it would happen sooner or later. See, she still doesn't believe it.
It's just so hard for me to believe. I wanted the scientific explanation.
I understand, but like you have to realize, look what happened to you, and you had really no control over.
I kept looking around, like I was waiting to see a dark shadow in my corner because I hear so many. I need to lay off the podcast, that and that, playing my phasmophobia right before bed probably also isn't a good idea.
Probably not.
But that's the only time I get to play it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's my.
I say that was
my supernatural experience.
I think that was a ghost encounter. I would say yes.
But it really freaked me out.
Yeah, they are freaky. Then it's like, what do you do?
So was I getting attacked and was something trying to take over me? Like, what was it? And is it going to happen again? I lit a bunch of lavender incense when I got home. If you didn't notice. I did. Like, cleanse this bitch up.
You're like, I'm getting rid of this motherfucker.
But we'll see. We'll see. So if you guys have a theory on this, please let me know. I'm interested to hear.
I say it's a ghost encounter. I say you had your first ghost encounter. You got your ghost cherry popped. Just saying.
I don't know, but it was freaky. Like, I still get chills thinking about it. Okay, back to John Christie. On the 8th of April in 1899 in Northampton near Halifax in the West Riding of Yorkshire, John Reginald Halliday Christie was born.
Reginald.
John. His friends and families called him Reg, but I'm going to refer to him John, as I am not his friend nor his family.
No.
He was the sixth child out of 7 for his large family. His father, Ernest John Christie, was a carpet designer, which, what an odd job to have. A carpet
What is
designer.
A carpet designer?
I would assume he designs carpet.
Like
fabric?
This kind of carpet, or like
the pattern?
Like this rug pictures.
I have no idea.
Huh.
I didn't look into it. I didn't really care that much.
That is kind of odd. That is kind of an odd job.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Ernest was a very strict and very severe man who didn't like to show affection towards his children, but had no problem disciplining them for minor offenses. John's mother and older sister would flip-flop between babying him and bullying him. In March of 1911, just before he turned 12, John's grandfather, David Halliday, passed away at the age of 75 in their family home after a long illness. He later stated that seeing his grandpa's body laid out on a trestle table gave him a feeling of power and well-being. The man that had terrified him was now just a bag of bones. It also created his fascination with corpses.
Because they saw his grandpa laying there?
Dead, yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, this is Sunny. This is Aurora's kitty.
She wants to be lovey. She wants petted.
Or not.
She was just trying to jump on my lap, so I picked her up. Now she just, forget you.
Yeah. John won a scholarship to Halifax Secondary School. He loved math, but especially algebra. He did well in history and woodwork too, but math held his heart. His IQ would later be tested, and it would be discovered that he had an IQ of 128. So damn, he's smart.
You notice something, not all, most of them are either really high or really low.
Yeah.
Like, there's no normal people. Maybe that's why we're not serial killers, because we're not dumb, but we're not smart.
Not yet.
Oh.
I've always wanted to get my IQ tested too.
Me too.
Just to see where I'm at.
Okay, guys, I just remembered this. Me too. I want to see where I'm at. Don't judge me. I have one earring in and one earring out because my dog tried to bite my earring last night, so I took it out and I went to sleep. and I'm a hot mess. My hair's crazy. I have no makeup on. I'm in my work clothes. It's been a long 2-3 weeks. Just don't judge me.
I'm judging.
I know you are. You're always judging, you asshole.
No.
So yeah, I'm just going to cover up my ears.
I'm sure they can't even see that close.
Well, I just noticed it because I could see my ear, and I was like, I forgot to put my earing in. And nobody said anything to me today at work. Like, nobody was like, why do you only got one earring in? Like, it's normal? Like, no.
I'd be worried that you lost it at work.
No,
I would have been like, you lost your earring. Yeah. Okay, so he's smart. He also went to Boothtown Council School in North Rom, sang in the church choir, and was a scout. He left school on April 22nd, 1913, and entered the world of employment, finding a position as an assistant projectionist. A projectionist is a person who operates a film projector.
That's what I was just going to ask, what a projectionist is.
Yeah, it should have been pretty obvious, but...
Yeah. But you never know.
No.
Because back in 1899, a projectionist could have been somebody who takes x-rays.
This is 1913.
Oh.
He was born in 18.
Okay. Well, but it still could have been somebody who takes x-rays or something.
Yeah. You never know. Plus, it's in England, they have different terminology than we do for things.
Yeah.
That's what I spent a lot of time having to research words because their language is so different than ours. Yeah. For, half the things they say, I was like, I don't know what that means. His classmates thought John was a weird loner, but this was the 1910s, so they used terms like a queer lad.
Oh.
Who kept to himself and was not very popular. He also struggled with impotence in his adolescence, having his first attempts at sex ending in embarrassment. He was given the nicknames Reggie No Dick and Can't Do It Christie.
Reggie No Dick.
Reggie No Dick.
I'm gonna use that next time somebody pisses me off. Be like,
you Reggie No Dick.
Something No Dick, whatever your name is. No Dick.
He suffered with impotence the rest of his life and could usually only perform sexually when he was with a sex worker.
Oh.
Yeah. Why? I don't know. Maybe the pressure was less.
Yeah, and he wasn't worried about if they wanted to date him or they liked him or whatever.
Yeah, it was just sex.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. John enlisted in the British Army in September of 1916, which was during World War I. He joined the 52nd Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire Regiment as an infantryman on April 12, 1917. 1 year later, the regiment was dispatched to France. John was second to the Duke of Wellington's regiment as a signalman. John got injured the following June by a mustard gas attack. He spent a month in the Calais military hospital recovering. He later said that the attack rendered him blind and mute for 3.5 years and permanently impacted his ability to speak loudly. Scottish journalist Ludovic Kennedy wrote that no record of his blindness was able to be traced back to the attack. While he might have lost his voice when he was admitted to the hospital, there's no way that they would have released him fit for duty if he had truly remained mute.
Right.
So we're calling BS. Ludovic Kennedy further argued that his inability to talk loudly was a psychological reaction to the gassing and not the lasting effects of the mustard gas.
Well, yeah, because you think you have to, in a sense, you have to be loud to be in the military. Because you got to be yelling orders, or you got to be yelling back to people saying, like, I'm okay, or I'm over here, or that. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, plus they're not going to let a blind person.
He said that he lost, too. Yeah, he lost his
sight and his ability to speak. So yeah, he's full of shit.
Yeah.
John's exaggerated response to the attack stemmed from an underlying histrionic personality disorder. This caused him to crave attention and sympathy, which he achieved by feigning illness. On the 22nd of October in 1919, John was demobilized from the army. John married Ethel Simpson from Bradford on May 10th of 1920 at the Halifax Town Register office. The same year, he got a job as a postman. Even after marriage, though, John still suffered from impotence, and he continued having intercourse with sex workers so he could have the release he needed. But He must have been able to achieve climax at some point with Ethel because earlier in their marriage, she fell pregnant and unfortunately experienced a miscarriage.
That's sad.
They moved to London at some point in 1923. In December, he joined the Royal Air Force, but again was discharged in that following August. Ethel and John separated 4 years into the marriage. Ethel got a job at the Garside Engineering Company on Iron Bridge Road in Bradford until 1928. She, along with her siblings, moved to Sheffield. In January of 1934, John and Ethel reunited. John spent most of his 1920s going in and out of prison for various crimes, which I'm going to go over now.
Okay.
So that was just him and Ethel, just kind of explaining their timeline. In 1920, John got a job as the postman, like I said. In 1921, he was convicted of stealing postal orders and received 3 months in prison on April 12th, 1921. He served his time at Her Majesty's Prison, Manchester, and was released on June 27th. In January of 1923, he was convicted of obtaining money on false pretenses and of violent conduct, but was bound over and placed on probation for 12 months instead of having to do any time in prison.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. That's how it always goes.
Yeah, it goes a lot for him that way. During 1924, he committed 2 counts of larceny and received consecutive sentences of 3 to 6 months imprisonment on September 22nd of that year at Her Majesty's Prison, Wandsworth. Around 1927, he got a job as a lorry driver, which apparently is just a truck driver.
Just going to ask
that. Was one of the things I Googled because I was like, what the fuck is a lorry driver? Different country, different terms. It makes researching these things difficult because half the time I'm looking it up.
Yeah. That's why I stick to mostly the American one.
On May 13th, 1929, John was convicted of assaulting Maud Cole.
I like that name.
Maud.
Maud.
I'm not into Maud.
I like it.
Who he had been living with at 6 Almeric Road in Battersea. One source stated that Maud was a sex worker, but it was just one source I read stated she was a sex worker. The other sources all said that he was living with her, so I don't know if she was a roommate, if they were in a relationship. I don't know. Okay. He hit Maud over the head with a cricket bat. The magistrate described it as a murderous attack, and he was sentenced to 6 months hard labor at Her Majesty's Prison, Wandsworth again. On November 1st, 1933, he was convicted of auto theft and went back to Wandsworth for another 3 months. This brings us back up to John and Ethel reconciling in 1934, although he continued his visits with sex workers. He did, however, cut back on his petty crime. So he's kind of cleaning his act up a little bit. They moved into the top floor flat of 10 Rillington Place in Notting Hill. At the time, it was a pretty rundown area of London, not the bougie Notting Hill it is now.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Because like Notting Hill, the movie.
Yeah. It wasn't like that then. They eventually moved to the ground floor flat in December of 1938. 10 Rillington Place was a 3-story brick end terrace home built in the 1870s during a period of time when they just slapped together a bunch of houses quickly, resulting in a lot of questionable properties, which deteriorated even further with being poorly maintained, with little to no improvements being made, and having mostly being multi-occupancy rentals. Number 10 was a common design with the ground and first floor. So it's counting the ground, first, second.
Which makes it 3.
Okay. So the ground and first floors contained a bedroom, living room, and kitchen in the extension. Mm-hmm. And then the second floor, which would really be the third floor, had 2 rooms only, which consisted of a kitchen, living room, like it was all in one, and then a bedroom.
Okay.
The building's occupants shared a single outside wash house, and none of the flats had a bathroom.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it
was like a
outhouse,
but it had water. Like it had a bath.
But it had a toilet, just not inside the house.
Yeah, it was in a washroom. It was like a separate building outside.
Okay.
Which is really weird. I don't know if that's a common thing there or me. I don't know.
Okay.
The street was close to the above ground section of the London Underground's Metropolitan line, and the train noise was almost deafening for everyone at 10 Rillington Place. So it wasn't like the best
it doesn't sound like it's great.
John worked for 3 years as a foreman at the Commodore Cinema in King Street, Hammersmith. At the beginning of World War II, he applied to join the War Reserve Police and was accepted because they had failed to check for a criminal record. He was assigned to the Harrow Road Police Station where he met Gladys Jones. They started an affair together, which lasted until mid-1943, when Gladys's husband, who was a serving soldier, returned home from fighting in the war to find that his wife was having an affair. He went to the house and discovered John there, and he assaulted him.
Good.
John met 21-year-old Austrian munitions worker and part-time sex worker named Ruth Fierce while she was soliciting clients in the snack bar in Ladbroke Grove. On August 24th, 1943, he invited her to his home for a little freaky time while his wife Ethel was out of town visiting her relatives. After they had sex, John got the impulse to strangle her and did so on his bed with a length of rope. He hid her body underneath the floorboards in his living room. Then the following evening, he buried her body in the back garden. Which, if he all of a sudden just had this impulse, why did he have a rope?
Yeah.
Who just keeps a rope
handy?
I mean, unless you're into, some kinky shit, which, to each their own.
Right. And they could have been, but I feel like he had planned this because there's no way. Like I have no rope, but if I had rope, it'd be in my garage or it'd be like put away in a toolbox or something.
Not in your bedroom, on your bed. That's weird. At the end of 1943, he resigned as a reserve constable. His service index card is now on display at the Metropolitan Police Museum, and evidence from his murders are on display at the Crime Museum.
Which takes me back to the other thing I was going to say, besides the rope. Why would you bury him in your garden and you don't live alone? You have another family that lives there.
Exactly. Well, right now, it's just them.
Oh, there was no other family.
There's no other family at this time.
Okay. But still, why would you bury her in a garden?
Yeah. Well, and this is a rental. He doesn't own this home.
What an idiot.
Yeah.
Okay.
He found a new job at an Acton radio factory the following year. There, he subsequently met his second victim in his new colleague, Muriel Amelia Eady.
I like Muriel.
Muriel had been suffering with bronchitis, and it just wouldn't clear up. On October 7th, 1944, John invited her to his flat with the promise that he could help treat her bronchitis with a special mixture he had concocted.
I bet it was a special mixture.
He had Muriel inhale the mixture from a jar with a tube inserted into the top. The mixture was Friar's Balsam. Friar's Balsam, also called compound benzoin tincture. It's a pungent solution of benzoin resin in alcohol that contains Cape aloes and sweet gum resin. It was invented by Dr. Joshua Ward in 1760. Friar's Balsam is an old remedy for congested sinuses and lungs. A few drops are placed on the surface of a bowl of hot water over which you would just hold your face and breathe in the steam. With a towel over your head to kind of keep the steam in. It can be applied to skin fissures, canker sores, fever blisters, as a styptic to stop bleeding or as treatment for damaged skin. Friar's balsam assists in helping tape and bandages adhere to the skin for a longer period of time and protects the skin covered by said tape and bandages. Additionally, podiatrists or orthopedists sometimes will use the tincture on the skin before applying casts as an added protector between the cast and the skin. So they don't, get itchy and they don't get sores and that kind of thing. The mixture has a vanilla and balsam scent. By using this mixture, it helped to disguise the smell of coal gas that John had hooked up to the second tube that was inserted into the jar. As Muriel sat breathing in the mixture, John unknowingly to Muriel unclamped the tube, letting the gas in, which had a carbon monoxide content of 15%.
Jesus.
After a few moments, Muriel was unconscious. John then raped and strangled her before burying her next to his first victim, Ruth Fürst.
This guy.
Timothy and Beryl Evans moved into the top floor flat at 10 Rillington Place the Easter of 1948. In October of that year, Beryl gave birth to their first child, Geraldine. Timothy was born in South Wales in 1924. His father wasn't part of his life. He had a bunch of health issues growing up and missed a lot of school as a result of those health issues. So Timothy never learned to read or write properly. So he was illiterate, basically. It is said that he had an IQ of 70. So you got IQ 70 versus IQ 128. Big difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
He worked for a little bit in the Merthyr coal mines before moving to London in 1939 to live with his mom and her second husband. He would tell elaborate made-up stories and would switch between a Welsh accent and a London one.
And this is
Timothy.
This is Timothy. Okay.
Yeah, Timothy Evans.
Okay.
According to the Radio Times, he had poor self-esteem and wanted to fit in with those close around him, which is why he would do that. So if he was with somebody that had a Welsh,
he would Welsh.
Yes.
Okay.
He met Beryl Thorley in 1946 and they got married a year later. After finding out Beryl was pregnant, they realized they needed a larger home and found it at 10 Rillington Place, which is sad if a kitchen, living room, and one bedroom is a bigger place.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
Like, where were you before?
Oh, man.
The couple struggled financially. So Timothy had a drinking problem, which did not help things. The birth of Geraldine put even more stress on the couple who were already in a rocky marriage. So they had Geraldine. A little bit later, she found out she was pregnant again. So they couldn't afford a second child. There was no way. They were barely surviving with the one they had. They would argue so loudly everyone in 10 Rillington Place could hear them. So when Beryl got pregnant with her second child, she decided to get an abortion, despite it being illegal at that time. I watched the movie 10 Rillington Place, and in that movie, it says that Beryl attempted to take pills to cause a miscarriage. She had a friend stay with her named Alice, and Alice was there to help her as she had her induced miscarriage. And it made Timothy very angry. He didn't want Alice there. He wasn't really on board with the abortion either. So he was upset. They were fighting in the movie. What I found online, it didn't really go like that. So it didn't really mention Alice. It didn't.
So even though they couldn't afford another child, he still wanted another child when she was pregnant?
I think he was just upset that she didn't even discuss it with him.
Okay.
She just took the pills, informed him that she was pregnant, and she took these pills to get rid of it.
Okay.
So I don't know if he would have eventually been on board or whatever. That's just how the movie depicted it. So when that failed to terminate the pregnancy, she sought help elsewhere. Enter John Christie. John told Beryl he could do it for her. A few weeks later, Timothy alerted the police that Beryl had died under mysterious circumstances. Timothy said that he gave Beryl a concoction to terminate the pregnancy, but it accidentally caused her death. He said that he had disposed of her body under a nearby drain. The police searched the building, but failed to find her body. Then Timothy changed his story, saying that his neighbor John Christie offered to perform the abortion for them. Timothy went to work that day like normal, but when he returned home to check on his wife Beryl, John told him that she had died during the operation. Since abortion was illegal, John convinced Timothy that he should leave London and that John would take care of disposing of the body and make arrangements for a nice couple to look after Geraldine. Timothy said he went to stay with some relatives in Wales, and when he returned, John refused to let him see his daughter, who in their right mind would let somebody just keep their daughter and not take.
And you not know. Well, I know that nobody knows who he is right now, but like even if he was a serial killer, you don't know him.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're neighbors. They've lived there for a little bit now, but not enough to where you would just trust him to put your child in the care of someone else.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So that's a little fishy to me. Like, why wouldn't you take your kid with you? I understand that you're probably panicking because your wife is dead.
Mm-hmm.
You have this young child. Like, I don't know exactly how old she was. Maybe like 15 months, maybe. Okay. A little over a year. But still, like,
I just don't understand people who leave their kids with random people. I mean, I get it. It's his neighbor. Like, you still don't know that person. You don't know what kind of person.
And you don't know the person that he's saying he's going to give her to.
Right.
The police then checked the outdoor wash house after he, made this second confession type. Changed his story. And they found the bodies of Beryl and Geraldine in a 16-week male fetus in that wash house. Which, why would they not have checked the entire property the first time? Like, you have somebody saying that somebody's dead. They disposed of the body on the property, but you didn't find it, exactly where they told you it was going to be. So why wouldn't you look at the rest of the fucking property?
So obviously it's not there.
Yeah. So
don't check anywhere else.
Let's just leave. It's stupid. That's just shoddy police work. Beryl's body had been wrapped twice, once in a blanket and then in a tablecloth. The post-mortem showed that Beryl and Geraldine had both been strangled to death and that Beryl had been physically assaulted before her death, which was apparent by facial bruising. Timothy claimed that John had killed Beryl in a botched attempted abortion. Timothy said that he didn't know his daughter was dead until the police told him that they found her body. He just thought John was holding her and was unwilling to let him see her. Police questioning eventually produced a confession by Timothy. His alleged confession may have been fabricated by police, as the statement appears contrived and artificial. After he was charged, Timothy withdrew his confession and once again accused John, this time of both the murders, both of his wife and his daughter. On January 11th, 1950, Timothy's trial for the murder of his daughter began. The prosecution decided not to pursue a second charge for the murder of his wife, so they're just going after him for the death of his daughter.
Did I miss something? Why did they think Timothy did it and not John?
Because he confessed.
But John did it.
But they don't.
They didn't question John?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, John Christie was a key witness for the Crown. He denied Timothy's accusations. He told the police about the fights he heard between Timothy and his wife Beryl, which they did fight loudly and often. The jury found Timothy guilty despite John's criminal history of theft and violence. The jury took 3 days to come to the decision. Timothy was sentenced to be hanged on January 31st. He tried to appeal his conviction, but his appeal was denied on February 20th. Timothy Evans, who was only 25 years old, was hanged at Her Majesty's Prison, Pentonville, on March 9th, 1950.
Okay.
To say the police made a couple mistakes during this case would be an understatement. They missed the other murder victim's remains in his garden. A femur bone was actually helping to prop up his fence. The garden area was only about 16 by 14 feet, so not very large. And the fence was parallel to the wash house where Beryl and Geraldine's bodies were later found. So they walked right by this. Several searches were made at the house after Timothy Evans confessed to placing his wife's remains in the drain, but the three policemen conducting the search didn't even go into the wash house. They apparently examined the garden, but didn't excavate or dig around at that point. John later admitted that his dog had dug up Muriel Edie's skull in the garden shortly after the police searches. He then threw the skull in an abandoned, bombed-out house on nearby St. Mark's Road. No systematic search was made of the crime scene. If there had been, almost definitely other human remains would have been found and would have pointed to John Christie being responsible. The several police searches of the property proved a complete lack of knowledge in handling forensic evidence. If they had been even remotely competent at their job, John would have been found out and the lives of Timothy and his 4 next victims would have been saved. But alas, they were not even a little bit competent. Their interviews with Timothy should have shown that the police concocted his alleged confession. When the first statement made by Timothy on November 30th, 1949, showed that he didn't know the true resting place of his wife's body and how she had died. Like, he said she was in one place and she was found in the complete opposite end of the property. He claimed his wife's body was either in a manhole or a drain at the front of the house. When the police's search failed to recover remains in either of those locations, they should have conducted a thorough search of the entire residence, wash house, and garden. They took no further action until later when the bodies were eventually found in the wash house upon a second search of the property. At the time of Timothy's first interview, he was unaware that his daughter had been killed. The police mishandled the interrogation from the very beginning. When the police showed Timothy the clothes of his wife and daughter, informing him that they had been found in the wash house, they shouldn't have revealed that information to him so that they could prove that he knew the actual location. His alleged confessions used words and speech patterns that a gentleman who couldn't read nor write, or with an IQ of 70, would have been able to use, such as the phrase terrific argument. The police also accepted all of John Christie's statements as fact without questioning any of it. His statements were crucial at Timothy's trial. The police were quick to believe him as he was a former War Reserve constable. They saw him as one of their own, even though he shouldn't have been because he had a record that they failed to.
Oh yeah, because at this time he was a war police.
Yeah, he was a reserve constable.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Or he had been. I don't think he was at this time. He was already done with that.
Oh, okay.
But they still knew him. If they had looked into his criminal convictions for theft and malicious wounding, his effectiveness as a key witness would have been questionable at best. It's also significant that John claimed to be an abortionist prior to meeting Timothy and Beryl, He actually told a colleague in 1947 that he was an abortionist. He repeated this claim after Timothy's trial to women he would meet in cafes. It's believed he might have thought of them as potential victims. That approach aligns with his MO of offering help to women to gain their trust and lure them back to his flat. So saying, hey, I can help you with that abortion. Mm-hmm. It's illegal.
Come back to my house.
Yeah, we'll do it on the down low. Nothing much happened for 3 years after Timothy's trial. On June 12, 1950, John found a job as a clerk with the British Road Services at their Shepherd's Bush depot. At the same time, new tenants moved into the top 2 floors at 10 Rillington Place. The new tenants were predominantly migrants from the West Indies. John and Ethel were both racist and were horrified that their new neighbors were of West Indian descent. Tensions between them arose and came to a head when Ethel accused one of her neighbors of assault. John negotiated with the Poor Man's Lawyer Center to continue to have exclusive use of the back garden under the pretense of having more space between him and his neighbors. That's kind of like a buffer. Mm-hmm. But more than likely, it was to make sure no one discovered the other bodies that were buried there.
This guy.
On the morning of December 14th, 1952, John would finally kill again when he strangled his wife, Ethel, as they lay in bed. She had last been seen in public 2 days prior. John told several different stories in an attempt to explain her absence and put a stomper on further questions of her whereabouts. He told her relatives in Sheffield when they wrote asking about her that Ethel had rheumatism and could not write for herself anymore. He told one neighbor that she was visiting her relatives in Sheffield and told another that she had gone to Birmingham. John resigned from his job at Shepherd's Bush on December 6th and hadn't found a new job yet. He sold his wife's wedding ring and watch on December 17th and some furniture on January 8th, 1953 to help support himself. He only kept...
That is selfish.
Yeah. Let's sell all of her shit.
Sell all her shit so I can survive.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So I don't have to find another job. He only kept cutlery, 2 chairs, a mattress, and his kitchen table. Everything else was sold. On the 26th of January, he forged Ethel's signature and cleaned out her bank account. He began cleaning the flat with strong disinfectants when his neighbors started to complain about the strong odors wafting from his house. John murdered his last 3 victims between January 19th and March 6th of 1953.
It's my nephew's birthday.
March 6th?
Mm-hmm. 1953.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Rita Nelson, Kathleen Maloney, and Hectorina McLennan were the 3 victims. Rita Nelson was a 25-year-old woman from Belfast who was visiting her sister in Ladbroke Grove. She was 6 months pregnant when she met John Christie. Kathleen Maloney was a sex worker from Ladbroke Grove area. Hectorina was living in London with her boyfriend Alex Baker when she met John in a cafe. All 3 of them would meet up on several occasions after that. He let Hectorina and Alex stay with him at Rillington Place while they looked for a more permanent place. John met Hectorina on her own and persuaded her to come back to his flat when he murdered her. He later convinced Alex, who came to Rillington Place looking for her, that he had not seen her. John kept this story up for several days, meeting with Alex regularly to help search for her and to get any news of her whereabouts. John modified his gassing technique for the murders of his last 3 victims. The same gassing technique he used for Muriel Eady. His technique consisted of a rubber tube connecting to the gas pipe in the kitchen he kept closed off with a clip. He had his victims seated in the kitchen, released the clip on the tube, and let gas leak into the room. The Brabham report pointed out that this explanation that John gave would not work, since he too would have been overpowered by the gas. It was established that all 3 victims had been exposed to carbon monoxide. The gas would make his victims drowsy, leaving them easy to strangle with a piece of rope. So what the movie showed that I watched was that he had a jar, he had a tube leading off of the jar that was hooked up to the gas. He had the other tube connected to like a face mask.
Okay.
And he would have them breathe it.
Okay.
After he unclamped it.
And he was saying this is to cure bronchitis and whatnot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, for Muriel.
Right.
For the other ladies, I don't know how he got
them to do it. If there was nothing wrong with them. Like it doesn't say.
And in the movie for Beryl, he was giving her to help with the pain while he performed the abortion.
Oh, yeah.
Well, prior to starting the abortion. Yeah. So he told her to breathe this. So, it's like going to the dentist, so it doesn't hurt. But these 3, it didn't really go into how he got them to breathe it in. John raped each of his last 3 victims repeatedly while they were unconscious and even continued once they had died. When this aspect of his...
Continued to rape them?
After they were dead. When this aspect of his crimes was publicly revealed, John quickly gained the reputation for being a necrophiliac. One commenter has cautioned against categorizing John as a necrophiliac, though, because according to statements John gave the police, he did not engage sexually with any of his victims exclusively after death. But I would counter them with the Cambridge Dictionary definition of necrophiliac as a person who is sexually attracted to or has sex with dead bodies. Nowhere does it differentiate whether it's exclusively sex with dead bodies or if they will also have sex with people who are alive too. So I would definitely label him as a necrophiliac because he indeed had sex with dead bodies.
Right.
That's the definition.
Right. Nice try, though.
Yeah, whoever that person was that said it. After his victims were strangled to death with a ligature, he would place some sort of cloth or fabric between their legs before he would wrap their semi-naked bodies in blankets and hide their bodies in a small alcove behind the back kitchen wall. He later wallpapered the entrance to this alcove so no one would even know it was there.
So, say that again?
So there's an alcove. Some places called it a pantry.
Okay.
But when I Googled alcove, kitchen alcove, it kind of showed just like an inset of an area. So like you could maybe put like a little table and chair there.
Okay.
It's just an inset. So I don't know if it was an actual inset or if it was a pantry. But most places refer to it as an alcove.
Okay.
Well, it says it was behind the back kitchen wall, so maybe it was like a little extra kind of room space. I don't know.
Okay.
So he wallpapered over the entrance, so you wouldn't see it. On March 20th, 1953, John moved out of 10 Rillington Place after illegally subletting his flat to a couple for some money. The landlord happened to visit that same evening and found the couple there instead of John. He demanded that they leave first thing in the morning. The landlord also allowed the tenant on the top floor flat, Beresford Brown, which is a unique name, to use John's kitchen since he obviously wasn't there to use it. On March 24th, that tenant discovered the wallpaper kitchen alcove when he attempted to insert brackets into the wall to hold a radio. The tenant peeled back the wallpaper, finding the bodies of Rita, Kathleen, and Hectoria. After showing the bodies to another tenant to make sure what he was seeing was real, because I'd be like,
No.
is that dead body?
Right.
Is that
no,
a dead
that's
body
just a
back there?
mannequin.
I mean, I'd be like, what the fuck am I seeing?
Yeah, like you can't think that it's real. You know what I mean?
Come look at this.
Like you're like, there's no way this is real.
Yeah.
This shit doesn't happen to me.
No. Beresford Brown contacted the police and a citywide search for John was underway. John had gone down to a Rowton house in King's Cross, which is a chain of hostels in London, and booked a room for 7 nights under his real name and address.
What an idiot.
He ended up leaving after only 4 nights because the discovery of his flat was all over the news. He wandered around London, sleeping on the streets, and spent a lot of the day either hiding out in cafes or theaters. On the 28th of March, he was running low on cash, so he pawned his watch in Battersea. On the morning of March 31st, police officer P.C. Thomas Ledger arrested John on the embankment near Putney Bridge, where police searched him. When police searched him, they discovered an old newspaper clipping about the arrest of Timothy Evans amongst his belongings. This dude be dumb. For being so smart, he's dumb.
Yeah.
I'm thinking he just thinks he's above.
That's how they all think when they're that smart. They think they're just above everybody and everything.
Everybody else is just so stupid. They'll never figure it out.
Nope, never.
But I mean,
and for being super smart, he hid these people in very dumb fucking places.
Yeah, but again, the police were very fucking dumb. John originally only admitted to murdering the women found in the alcove and his wife during the police interview. When they informed him of the skeletons they found buried in the back garden, he also admitted responsibility for their deaths as well. On April 27th, 1953, John Christie confessed to murdering Beryl Evans, although he denied killing Geraldine. On one occasion after his trial, John told a hospital orderly that he may have been responsible for her death as well. Some have speculated that John didn't want to openly admit to the murder of Geraldine in order to not alienate the jury from his desire to be found not guilty by reason of insanity. And so
it's not guilty.
And so he wouldn't be murdered by fellow inmates when he would eventually go to prison. So he was thinking of the future by not admitting that he killed Geraldine. So nobody likes kid killers.
No.
On June 5th, 1953, John confessed to the murders of Muriel Eady, Ruth Fürst, helping the police to finally identify On June 5th, 1953, John confessed to the murders of Muriel Eady and Ruth Fürst, helping the police to finally identify the skeletal remains. Infuriatingly, John was only tried for the murder of his wife, Ethel. So all these dead bodies in his house, and he's only getting tried for Ethel. His trial began on June 22nd, 1953, in the same court Timothy Evans had falsely been tried and sentenced to death in just 3 years earlier. John pleaded insanity. His defense described him as mad as a March hare and claimed he couldn't remember many details of the events. Dr. Matheson, who worked at Her Majesty's Prison Brixton, evaluated John and acted as a witness for the prosecution and testified that John Christie had a hysterical personality, but was not insane. The jury thankfully rejected John's insanity plea, and after deliberating for only 85 minutes, they found him guilty and he was sentenced to death by Mr. Justice Finnemore. On June 29th, 1953, John stated he would not be making an appeal against his conviction. On July 2nd, Timothy Evans' mother wrote to John asking him to confess all, meaning to help clear her son's name, that he was falsely convicted and hanged for. On the 8th of July, his Member of Parliament, George Rogers, interviewed John for 45 minutes about the murders. The next day, John spoke to the Scott Henderson Inquiry about the murders. 4 days later, the Home Secretary David Maxwell Fyfe said that he could not find any grounds medically or psychologically for John to be reprieved. John actually got some visitors while he was in the condemned cell, one of which was an ex-Army friend, Dennis Haig, on July 13th. He also was seen by the prison governor and John's sister, Phyllis Clark, who both visited the night before his execution. MP George Rogers also wanted to speak to John for a second time on the night before his execution, but John refused the meeting. According to both Dennis Haig and Phyllis Clark, John appeared to have accepted his imminent death. At 9 o'clock in the morning on July 15th, 1953, John Reginald Halliday Christie was hanged at H.M. Prison, Pentonville, by executioner Albert Pierrepoint. After the noose had been placed around his neck, John complained that his nose itched, to which Albert Pierrepoint assured him, "It won't bother you for long." Mic drop. After the execution, John's body was buried in an unmarked grave within the prison ground, which is standard practice for executed prisoners in the United Kingdom. They found that John had collected pubic hair from some of his victims, and when they separated it out, they speculated that he was responsible for more murders than just those he carried out at 10 Rillington Place. Before his execution, he claimed that the 4 different clumps of hair in his collection came from his wife, and the 3 bodies discovered in the kitchen alcove. But only Ethel matched the hair type. Even if 2 of the others had come from the bodies of Ruth or Muriel, which by that point they were just bones, so they couldn't compare hair. There was still 1 clump of hair unaccounted for. It could not have come from Beryl Evans, as no pubic hair had been removed from her body. In 1978, Professor Keith Simpson, who was one of the pathologists involved in the forensic examination of John Christie's victims, said this about the pubic hair collection. It seems odd that Christie should have said hair came from the bodies in the alcove if in fact it had come from those now reduced to skeletons. Not very likely that in his last 4 murders, the only trophy he took was from the one woman with whom he did not have perimortal sexual intercourse. And even more odd that one of his trophies had definitely not come from any of the unfortunate women known to have been involved. They never made any attempts to trace any of the other victims to John by examining records of missing women in London during this period of activity, or by DNA testing on the pubic hair now that we have more sophisticated testing methods. Author-investigator Michael Eddowes suggested that John had been in a position with being a reserve constable to have used that power to commit many other murders than what had been discovered. Historian Jonathan Oates, however, considered it unlikely that he had any other victims, arguing that he would not have deviated from his standard method of killing in his place of residence. But if he murdered people before he moved to that place of residence, he might have killed them, at his other house.
Yeah.
You should be checking there. Where was he living beforehand?
Yep.
After John's conviction, there was some controversy regarding the conviction and execution of Timothy Evans, who had been convicted largely based on the testimony John Christie gave at his trial. John confessed to Beryl's murder, and although he neither confessed nor was charged with Geraldine's murder, he was widely considered guilty for both murders. This cast considerable doubt on the fairness of Timothy Evans' trial and raised the horrifying realization that an innocent man had probably been hanged. The uncertainty led to a second inquiry chaired by High Court Judge Sir Daniel Brabham in the winter of 1965 to 1966. He re-examined the evidence from both cases and evaluated some of the arguments for Timothy's innocence. He concluded that it was more probable than not that Timothy had killed his wife, but not his daughter Geraldine, whose death John Christie was responsible for. Christie's likely motive was that her presence would have drawn more attention to Beryl's disappearance, which would have been bad for John, as it would increase his risk of his own murders being discovered. Judge Brabham also stated that the uncertainty involved in the case would have prevented the jury from being satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt, and Timothy would have been retried. These conclusions were used by the Home Secretary Roy Jenkins to recommend a posthumous pardon for Timothy Evans, which was in fact granted, as he had been tried and executed for the death of his daughter. Roy Jenkins announced Timothy's pardon on October 18, 1966. Timothy's remains were subsequently exhumed and returned to his family, who then arranged to have him reburied in a private grave. His execution and other controversial cases contributed to the 1965 suspension and subsequent ending of capital punishment in the United Kingdom. In January of 2003, the Home Office awarded Timothy's half-sister Mary Westlake and his sister Eileen Ashby payments as compensation for the miscarriage of justice in his trial. The independent assessor for the Home Office, Lord Brennan QC, accepted that the conviction and execution of Timothy Evans for the murder of his child was wrongful and a miscarriage of justice, and that there is no evidence to implicate Timothy Evans in the murder of his wife. She was most probably murdered by Christie. Lord Brennan believed that the Brabham report's conclusion that Timothy probably murdered his wife would be rejected given John Christie's confessions and convictions. So he did get his name clear. His family did get some retribution.
Yeah, but after the fact.
Several years after the fact.
Yeah. But we can't go in a long spiel this now. Angela's got to go. So find us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. If you have any stories, let us know. Look up our website at
www.spine-chillingchatspodcast.com, or you can send stories, encounters. Let me know if you think I had a ghosty experience myself last night at our email, which is spinechillingchatspodcast@gmail.com.
Yes. So until next time.
Yeah, let us know. We hope you enjoyed this. We hope you come back. And most of all, we hope you
keep it spooky.
Bye, guys.
Bye.